All right, hey everybody. My name is Matthew. I used to work at Meta, and before that, lived in Kansas. Had cancer when I was 18. Had 3 months to live. Beat it with nutrition. Rose the ranks in the tech industry. Was in South Africa for a while, delivering AIDS medications to people. Currently, am 42 and working on basically combat skills and a bunch of other things too. Own a number of businesses and run them. I am doing this ghost church thing because I am frustrated with the current world and don't feel like there's a lot of options for people being hardcore or kicking ass that are not also fucking idiot morons. So I'm trying to create a space for people who care about helping others, helping themselves, reaching health for themselves, living the life that they want themselves, but also care about other people and don't want to fuck other people over, basically. So this week's topic is why the right wins and the left loses. A lot of shit has been going down, obviously, in the media and in culture, at least in America. And so I am going to talk about it. If you're new here, welcome. If you have joined the last couple weeks, we've been talking about the four wars and different ways of moving toward health. So feel free to go back and watch any of that stuff. Last week we talked about how to conquer fear, which had a lot of great feedback and questions, and hopefully I addressed all those concerns. This week I just wanted to kind of break down some things. This was kind of triggered by some friends of mine who were talking about why the right seems to be far better at playing the political game and making things happen than the left, and so I'm going to break that down today. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to walk through the right's playbook. So I basically did a bunch of research, and then these are also things that I've noticed over the years, just kind of watching things unfold. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. So my website is fitnerds.club. I transitioned from being an executive in the tech industry, was head of design at Cameo, and then was also at Meta, as I said, too. Got decently physically and psychologically unhealthy in the tech industry, didn't super love it, and then have spent the last couple of years rebuilding my body. I went from 29% body fat down to 17% body fat. I'm going to try to get down to around 12 to 14-ish in that range. And I've also been working on combat skills, have been doing calisthenics, have been doing climbing, which I've loved for all of my life. Used to go rock climbing when I was a kid a ton and would climb on all kinds of stuff. My parents was so frightened that I was going to die, and I did almost die multiple times. And so I've basically been on this journey of like actually getting healthy instead of just talking about it. And a lot of the information that's out there is bullshit. And I started Fit Nerds to help other high achievers become healthy in a way that they could still be high achievers, basically, because I knew that lifestyle. So anyway, that's the website. If you have any questions, get in contact with me there. There's a variety of contact forms and stuff on that website. So yeah, or chat with me here, or yeah, I think my Instagram is linked as well. I'm pretty sure on my Twitch page. So feel free to reach out in any way. Okay, so the right's playbook. So the first thing that I did quite a few years ago is that they committed to the long game. So they're not thinking weeks in advance. They're not thinking months in advance. This is like multiple decades long plan. More intense planning than the MCU, for example. So Kevin Feige, not nearly as awesome as the Republican Party in terms of planning and mapping things out. So we're going to walk through their entire map. Basically, what happened was after Goldwater's being demolished and Nixon and all that stuff, which you can dig into and Google and research that if you want to get into that. But basically, after all that went down, the right recognized that they needed lasting infrastructure. They didn't just need to win elections. They needed much, much more than that. People often talk about, I'm going to quick side note here, people often talk about how dumb the right is, but my take on it is that they're much smarter and know how to play the game much better than the left does, in my opinion. It's kind of like the left is Ned Stark in Game of Thrones. Like, cool that you have principles, cool that you want to stand for the different things. Cool that you have a particular way that you think things should be or go, but also you're not smart enough not to get your head chopped off at the end of season one. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the first season of Game of Thrones, but he just doesn't know how to play the game. And the right is basically like, we're going to play the game so well that we're going to crush everyone else. And they're just much better at it. So while I understand why people think that the right is dumb, and in many ways they are dumb, and I don't like them, they also are way smarter than the left in a lot of ways too. So the left might not like hearing that, but who cares? Gargle my balls. So then after committing to the long game, they built a media ecosystem. This was actually a genius move, and it took a long time. Again, this is a multi-decade plan, but they realized that what they really needed to do is build a media ecosystem, and they did this extremely well. So they started with talk radio. My wife is listening. My wife is a first-generation Korean immigrant. She works in the nonprofit sector doing financial education for under-resourced communities, and she kicks ass at it. She's really great at it, and it's amazing to watch. She's listening to a podcast right now. I think it's called Flamethrowers, that kind of chronicles the development of talk radio and how the right built this entire media ecosystem. And it's very fascinating to listen to. When we're traveling and driving around, going exploring and different things, we listen to it. And it's crazy how many things that they tried until they found a formula that works. And it's also interesting to hear how similar the things that were said decades ago are to today, because human psychology hasn't really changed that much. Of course, it hasn't adapted or changed that much in a number of decades. We've been around for like 300,000 years or more. So they did a great job with that. Then they moved into cable news. When cable news became more popular, they basically tried to tackle each new market and did a great job with it. And now we have the kind of digital echo chamber thing of like the YouTube algorithm, the Facebook algorithm, those sorts of things. And they really shaped the narrative. And what they basically did here was they bypassed other media and created a world of their own where their framing of reality dominated. Now, it's important to note here that their framing of reality is disconnected from actual reality, but that tends not to matter because perception is a huge part of reality, and they do a good job of basically shifting perception. So they can kind of create whatever reality they want. Religions do this as well. Then their next step after that was to take over local and state politics. So school boards, state legislatures, city councils, and governorships, they were very strategic and surgical with how they did this. Getting people on board, this was, again, a coordinated effort. They also coordinated gerrymandering districts to hold power with fewer votes. And so basically they were being ultra smart here while the Dems were being fucking morons. So the Dems chased national wins, but the Republicans built a bottom-up political machine, which ended up being a much better plan overall. And then from there, they went into judicial domination. So once they had this kind of local and state politics, they realized that they needed the judicial stuff because this is where a lot of the laws really become real. So the laws are kind of like on paper, but the judicial system is when they become real in people's lives. And so they realized that was a crucial step. So they created a pipeline of conservative judges through the Federalist Society and a few other groups as well. And they focused on lifetime appointments. The main reason this is significant is because judges don't need to be elected. So they can kind of manipulate this, and then how things actually manifest in people's lives, they have direct influence over that. From there, they went into culture war mastery, which was using emotional issues. So they understand human psychology much, much better than the Democrats. In fact, I was listening to, after all the kind of bullshit that happened with the Signal stuff, which was hilarious to watch, it was funny listening to the clips from Hegseth, because he's like, clearly works out, takes care of his body, and he's like very confident and like saying things into the camera like there were no war plans, which there obviously were. He's like lying out of his ass, but he's like very confident there were no war plans. No one's just tweeting war plans, and he just comes across like very like powerful, authoritative. And then they had the editor of The Atlantic who got added to the group chat on MSNBC, and I watched the interview with him, and he's kind of like feels small, feels quiet. He's just kind of like, yeah, Wallace is like saying mean things about me, and I've known him for a long time, and we're colleagues and stuff, and he's saying mean things and lying about me, but that's okay. And I'm like, it reminds me of one of my uncles who's like in insurance or something. I don't even know, but he's like comes across as so kind of like pansy ass, and I just hate it. I'm not a right person. I'm aggressively nonpartisan. I've talked about this before, and we'll go into more of that in the end. But I'm just like, this is, I think, part of the problem with Democrats is they come across as just these weak ass morons who couldn't hold their own in a fight if their life depended on it, and that kind of vibe doesn't work well in the culture that we have. It may work well in Europe, and I think, or number of other places where people value different things, but here in America, there's this kind of like hardcore, you know, from the ground up, working class value kind of strength and overcoming obstacles kind of vibe. And I have kind of shied away from that at various points in my life for various reasons, which we may get into at some point. But one thing that the right, I think, does well is realize that there's a huge amount of people who value that kind of a thing, and they lean into it. And I think the left has major issues trying to connect with that demographic, and they just kind of come across as like very chill and like if someone is lying about you and you're like, that's fine, that's a weird thing to do, like that shouldn't be okay, and you should stand up for yourself. It just comes across as like super weak sauce. It's like if someone was on a bully on a playground and they were like punching you and you were like, it's okay, I forgive you, like like just like that's nice, but like it doesn't stop the bully or get the bully off the playground or stop the bully from hurting other people. Like it's just a weird, like almost like principled approach that doesn't actually have any impact in actual reality. And I think a lot of left people like wish the world was a certain way, like wish it was more kumbaya and we can like talk out our issues and all that stuff. But that doesn't always work. And sometimes like if your home is being invaded by somebody who's trying to take your shit, talking to them very likely will not work. And there's some situations that you do need to have more of a powerful force. And for some reason, the left is very hesitant about that kind of stuff. I think because they think that doing any kind of violence or doing any kind of harm is like bad. But I just strongly disagree. I think that defending yourself and using force can be the appropriate response and can be a good thing. And I think the left is just very hesitant to enter into that gray area at all. I think that they're like, it's never okay. And I'm like, I definitely think that it is sometimes okay. And the right definitely thinks it's okay. And I think that's why they win the culture war. So to dive a little bit deeper into this, they use emotional issues, not logical issues. They use emotional issues like abortion, guns, religion, and wokeness to rally people. So they understand that humans are primarily emotion machines, not reason machines. And so they tap into that emotion and they weaponize fear and identity. Fear, again, is a base level emotion. We talked about fear last week. And the reason I kind of wanted to set that up last week is to talk about this because I think they're really good about leveraging fear. Fear is a universal human thing. And a party that can use fear to their advantage will win every time. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it healthy, doesn't make it good. It's a thing that we need to be aware of. And I am annoyed that the left seems to be unaware of the fact that that's how the right works. And there are definitely ways to mitigate that because there are better ways to motivate people than fear, but fear is a powerful one. And the right doesn't have any qualms with leveraging it. And I think the left needs to stop beating around the bush and actually acknowledge that that's the case. And we'll get to a better way at the end of this. But they basically weaponize fear and identity, which is a big deal to get people to vote against their own interests. It's so funny. This is back to the dumb thing. It's so funny how dumb right people are because they're voting against their own interests. Like, for example, my parents are very into national parks, especially my dad. He was a national park ranger and loves the land and all this stuff. And so he's voting for people who are trying to destroy all that, which is just bananas. But it's just interesting how people are hoodwinked into harming themselves. And the way that that's possible is through this kind of emotional issue and weaponizing fear and weaponizing identity kind of thing. So culture trumps policy. People will vote with their gut, not spreadsheets. And this is something that the right understands and the left does not. They're like throwing facts and figures and like all this stuff out. And it's like, it just doesn't sell. And this has been talked about so much, but yet the left cannot get their shit together on this kind of stuff. And I don't even think that they know how to get from here to there. Another quick point on this. Apparently I had a lot to say about this. My wife sent me some TikToks and some Instagrams of some people who are more intense or more hardcore on the left, who are like saying it like it is and calling things out and like being a lot more intense and sort of in your face about things. And I was like, that's nice. And that is a piece of this. But the thing that I was annoyed with about it is like, this is a piece of the puzzle. It's a step along the way. And the whole plan is basically this. And we'll get through the rest of it. But like, just because you're trying to match them on this piece doesn't mean you've committed to the long game, built an ecosystem, taken over politics, taken over the judicial system, and then done your culture war. It's just like very reactionary. And we'll get to a little bit more about that in just a second too. You're just listening to what the right is doing from like an emotional tone perspective and trying to match that. But this is a strategic piece of a larger puzzle. And it's yet another reason why I feel like the right, while appearing to be way dumber than the left, is actually way smarter in how they play this game. They also use this. They had a strategic use of religion, which is very smart. I am not religious. I was so religious that I went to seminary and was a pastor for a while, and then deconstructed and realized that religion was there was basically no evidence for a God or for an afterlife or for anything, essentially, which we can have a discussion about. But what the right is like, they don't really care if religion is real or not. They just know that people believe in religion, and so they decided to leverage that. They aren't like, we're going to respect all religions. They're like, if your religion are these things, then we're the party for you. And that was a very, very intelligent move. They basically looked at what's the majority religion. Let's associate with that religion. If the majority religion in the United States would have been people who were Muslim, they would have picked that one. The goal was basically to identify your political party with the dominant religion to get as many votes as possible. So they tied evangelical Christianity directly to conservative politics, and they framed the GOP as the protector of these traditional values and God's plan. So basically, like, it became a moral obligation to vote Republican for anyone who was religious in this religious group. And again, if it would have been Hindu, they would have gone for that one, and they would have tried to pull the same move. And this created intense loyalty because for some reason people are ultra loyal to their religions, and we could dig into that later. There's a lot of factors for it that I dove into when I was deconstructing, and I'm happy to go into that. But this became like a duty thing. So even if you didn't necessarily agree with some of the conservative politics or their viewpoints or their actions, it was a duty for you to vote for them anyway, because that was associated with God's plan or your religion. What God wanted you to do or what God wanted. This is very overt. There's I'm sure you've seen tons of things talking about how Trump is like appointed by God, and then just all kinds of stuff. And Trump leans into this hardcore, posting images of him as like the Messiah and things like that. Again, all strategic and all complete bullshit. Then from there, once they kind of got the religion thing done, they went into dark money, which is like the Koch brothers stuff, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. But they basically set up a bunch of different think tanks and legal groups and university programs and political ads. And they kind of like started, now that they had kind of built the infrastructure, they started pulling the levers of it and impacting various things. So this money and think tanks thing was essentially leveraging the entire system that they had previously built, all of this infrastructure. So the media ecosystem, the local politics, the judicial system, the culture, and religious groups as well. So this entire pipeline and ecosystem that they created, this is where they start to pull the levers of it right here. And it starts to pay off. But again, this is like decades of work. Have the Dems done anything like this? Absolutely not. From there, thanks to all the different infrastructure that they built, they started doing voter suppression and election engineering. So they made it harder for people of color to vote and also young people to vote. They purged voter rolls. Ridiculous. Closed a bunch of polling places to make it harder to vote in certain areas, and they have been trying to limit mail-in voting. I'm sure you've seen this. If you Google past news clips or past like Daily Show clips or anything, you can see them laying these tracks for years. They also, 4 years ago, I'm sure you remember, claimed voter fraud to further justify restrictions. So they want more restrictions. If they claim voter fraud, they can lock things down even more. So that's the whole point of claiming voter fraud. Notice now that since Trump won the election, there isn't any claim of fraud. So funny. So now apparently everything's working great because he won. And the way that this works is basically if you're the minority, which the right is the minority, they like to try to claim that they're not, but they totally are. And that's annoying too. But again, not connected to reality. When you're the minority, fewer votes equals better odds. So the fewer people that vote, the more you can have a chance of winning. And then the last piece here is message discipline. So all of this stuff that they have worked to build, they then essentially run what's usually called a customer psychology playbook, where you basically are very disciplined about what messaging you put out there. And this is consumer psychology is like a field of study of psychology that pretty much any business uses, and it's how that people can influence, mainly corporations and businesses can influence customer behavior. So they make their slogans ultra simple to so that you remember them, like family values, tax cuts, small government, make America great again. These are things that you could remember. It's sort of like my wife and I downgraded all of our streaming services so we get ads again, and the like liberty thing, anytime we hear the word liberty, like it just comes into our heads and we like sing it, and it's very funny every time. But that's a good example of like you just hear something repeated enough and then people will remember it. And they are just so much better than the Democrats on being disciplined about these talking points and these phrases, and they just repeat the shit out of them, and then other people start repeating them, and humans are just, they just repeat stuff like crazy. It's also really funny and ironic to me that people on the right will often be like, don't be a sheep and don't follow along. And they're the worst at that. There's like no critical thinking. They're just repeatedly hearing a message and then like thoughtlessly parroting it and not realizing it and being like, we're thinking for ourselves and we have critical thought. And they totally do not. So funny. Okay, so then also there's unified talking points across all of their platforms that we just went over. So across the political platforms, here, the media ecosystem here, the culture here, religion, watching clips where people will line up, like a supercut of a pastor saying a certain thing and a person on the news saying it, and on a different channel, the news person saying the same thing, and then like a politician saying it in a press conference or something is just really interesting. They really do a good job of like kind of coordinating all this stuff and making sure that everyone's saying the same shit. Again, the Democrats don't have anything close to this. It's just a bunch of people who were saying stuff, and then also now they're like saying it louder, but like cool. That doesn't actually help do anything or help anything. And the reason this works, again, it's the consumer psychology stuff. So repetition creates belief and simplicity sells. Those are two very common. If you know anything about business or companies or marketing or anything, those are very common things. Again, none of this playbook is like new or unknown or anything like that. It's just that they decided to do it and they had the discipline and the consistency to stick to it for multiple decades. It's sort of like if you want to go to the gym or eat healthy or something, you can do it for like a week or two, but that's not really going to change anything. But if you did it for a whole year or a whole 5 years, you would be incredible. Your body would be strong and jacked, and your nutrition and health would be in a really fantastic spot. And I think a lot of people have trouble with consistency and discipline, but the right has just fucking made it happen. They've just pulled it off. I may go into in a future that this is something that comes up a ton in nutrition coaching, and a lot of people have asked me about. But this concept of like how to stay motivated or how to stay disciplined, I might go into. This is why the right is like, in my opinion, the main reason why the right is kicking the left's ass is because they've been disciplined enough to create this plan and then over multiple decades stick to the fucking plan instead of going off in a different direction or coming up with a new plan. And then executing on it, building it year over year over year, more and more and more. And then now they're using that same discipline to coordinate all the messaging and leveraging the system that they've created. It's actually like pretty fucking amazing what they've been able to do. So I summarize this here, which is why this has worked so well. Again, consistency, decades of messaging alignment, and consistent infrastructure building. Coordination. This is another thing the Democrats don't do well. The Democrats kind of argue with each other a lot, which is super dumb. They're kind of like trying to be right instead of trying to work together. Like, oh, you're right. Like that thing that you did is slightly wrong in this way, and I'm more right than you in this way. And it's just like really annoying. But they managed to coordinate business, religion, media, and politics all rowing in the same direction. So they're so much better at getting everyone to row in the same direction. Democrats can't do that at all, in my opinion. They also understand that you should focus on emotion over policy. So tapping into identity and fear is more powerful than logic or proposals. We can wish this wasn't the case all fucking day. But the reality is humans are emotional decision makers. They make decisions based on emotion, not logic. And so the right understands that they need to appeal to their constituency on an emotional level. So emotion over policy. Democrats a lot of times do not want to do that. They would rather understand what like reality or things that actually work. And build policy around those sorts of things. But the problem is people don't resonate with spreadsheets. They resonate with a powerful person saying something with high conviction because of how we've evolved as a species. And the left, if they want to compete, need to get on board with that shit and just be willing to put some emotion into it. And then the last piece here is opposition complacency. So while the right is being very strategic and building power methodically, the left has been very fragmented and relied on reactionary strategies, which I talked about earlier. Like a lot of the stuff, and even what I'm doing right now, is like a reaction to what they have done well. And granted, their whole plan was in reaction to essentially them failing so hard. That being said, it's not okay for us to just be fragmented and reactionary anymore. If we want to build a better world that has different ideologies and values than what the right is offering, we need to play the game better than they do. And so being fragmented and being reactionary is not going to fly. Next week, I'm going to talk about how we can actually kick ass. If you're a person who likes the idea of building a better world but doesn't want to do it in the way that the right has done it, we're going to kind of do a deep dive into what a strategy would be, and I am about 90% done with it, but I decided to break this into two parts. This is the part where I talk about how fucking great the right's plan has been and how amazingly consistent and disciplined they've been. And then next week, I'll talk about a plan that we could do, and we'll see if we're disciplined enough to do it. I know I can be. I don't know if you can be. If you can be, join us. If you can't be, get the fuck out of here. So this is a teaser for that plan, which is rebuild a reality-based media ecosystem. So I think we need a media ecosystem, and I think it should be based in reality, not whatever reality someone thinks should be the case and convince people of. I like knowing as many true things as possible. I like getting as close to reality as possible. It will never be perfect because human brains are locked in a dark vault away from reality, and we just have our sensors to give us data, our brain and our mind and our consciousness data. So we're always going to be removed from reality, and there's an intermediary between us and reality. And human memory is super faulty. I talked about the cognitive biases a few weeks ago, which I would highly recommend everyone look at. But I think while it won't be perfect, getting as close to reality as we possibly can as a major part of our media ecosystem is the way to go. We also need to make the economy work for regular people. The right is claiming that they do this, but they absolutely do not do this. They fuck regular people over. And so what we want to do is build an economy that actually tangibly, measurably works for regular people. And we need to fight like they do, except smarter. They're like running a playbook that's pretty common with consumer psychology, which we could also do. And because I feel like their intelligence level isn't that strong, I feel like it wouldn't actually be that hard to fight like they do, except smarter. So that's the plan. And then the last piece here is, and this is a mantra that I think we should take to the grave, is we get shit done. We get things done. This is a problem. And I think it's partially what Trump is trying to do right now, which is like actually do stuff. And on that point, I do think we have a lot of work to do as a group of people who want to build a better world. Again, I'm aggressively nonpartisan. I'm not left. I'm not right. I am interested in building a better world, helping ourselves be as healthy as possible, and helping other people be as healthy as possible. That's what I'm about. And we can't do that by just talking about stuff, right? Like reading a book about being an amazing fighter or bowler or horseback rider or like whatever it is. Reading a book about being an awesome boxer is not the same as being an awesome boxer. In order to be an awesome boxer, you actually have to get to the gym, practice, get shit done, and then win fights. So reading about it or talking about it doesn't do much. And I feel like the people on the left are just interested in talking a lot of the time. What about this idea? What about this idea? How can we include this other idea? Like, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that because of these reasons and like all this stuff. And I'm much more about getting shit done. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. Nothing in life is perfect. Humanity's never been perfect. No systems that we create are perfect. No products that we create are perfect. This kind of like idea that it has to be exactly correct before we go and implement something or get something done is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous. So I think I'm interested in healing ourselves or continuing to move toward healing ourselves, continuing to help others move toward healing, continuing to help the world move toward healing. And in order to do that, we have to get shit done. This is a hilarious quote that I just thought of when I was putting this together that I don't know if anyone will like, but I like it. So whatever. It's from the second Avengers movie. And just for anyone watching, I used to hate Marvel with a passion. Didn't like it. Was really annoyed with the Avengers movies. Like didn't like any of that stuff. And then once I kind of saw how all the pieces fit together and that they had planned it out so well, I became very interested and very much respected what they did, creating this very cohesive, interwoven story. And I just was like, that's creatively really, really cool. So I'm not like a Marvel fanboy or anything. I became one later once I realized how much planning and effort had gone into it. But this is a quote from the second Avengers movie that I really like, which is that everyone creates the thing they dread. Men of peace create engines of war. Invaders create Avengers. People create children designed to supplant them to help them end. And I think that's very true. And basically what I'm saying is that we should double down on that. They have mopped the floor the last like 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years of time. And we're not going to be able to fight that immediately. But I am interested in creating a group of people who are interested in building a better world over multiple decades. And so if you are interested in that too, please join us, reach out, continue to watch these. I'm going to be here every single Sunday at 2 p.m. on Pacific time. I'm in San Francisco. And so next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the plan would be to actually get that done. So that's pretty much all I had. I'm trying to keep these shorter. I got some feedback that I was talking way too long. I think last week's was over an hour. The week before that was like 40 minutes ish, I think. The week before that was like an hour and a half, maybe. So that's pretty much it. Reach out on fitnerds.club if you have any questions or thoughts. There's a contact form there. Yeah, would love to hear any thoughts that you have. All right. I will see you next week.